Mike, how's golfing this weekend?
Golf was great, T. I heard you played too. How'd you do?
Golf is becoming a identity that is addictive and frustrating equally, but the determination is increasing. So I feel like this is slowly creeping into my day-to-day.
Loving that. Nothing like a good walk spoiled.
A good day on the course is always a good day.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome back to Sideline Ascent. I'm Taryn Sheehan, a former Division I coach turned professor, mom, and golf is now becoming part of my identity.
And I'm Mike Marich, former athletic director, coach, mentor, and someone who believes the people shaping athletes deserve real support too.
Every week, we're bringing you the mentors you wish you had.
The lessons we wish somebody had poured into us. Real conversations that go far beyond X's and O's with mentorship that helps you grow, lead, and truly thrive.
Wherever you coach, on the track, on the court, in the classroom, or even if you're just figuring it out as you go, this space is built for you.
Sideline Ascent is brought to you by Mindset Curated at mindsetcurated.com and Morgan Athletics at morganathletics.com. Two organizations committed to elevating coaches and the athletes they serve.
Today, we are joined by Dena Evans, who is one of the most accomplished and respected distance running coaches in American track and field. A former 3-time All-American at Stanford, Evans returned to her alma mater as a coach and spent 6 years helping transform the Cardinal women cross-country program into a national powerhouse. In her first season as head coach, she led the Stanford women to the 2003 NCAA championship, earning NCAA and Pac-10 Coach of the Year honors. Across her collegiate coaching career, Evans guided athletes to NCAA titles, school records, Olympic trials finals, and more than 50 All-American performances. Her athletes include standouts like Lauren Fleshman, Alicia Craig, Sarah Bay, and Ariana Lambie, and her teammates captured multiple Pac-10 NCAA West regional titles. Beyond Stanford, Evans has spent 25 years coaching distance runners of all ages, from youth athletes to national class veterans. She has served on 11 U.S. international team staffs, including World Cross Country, World Relays, World Indoors, and 3 consecutive World Athletics Outdoor Championships. In 2023, she was the women's head coach for Team USA at the World Championships in Budapest. Evans is the club director of the Peninsula Distance Club and co-founded the Bear Area Running Club Camp. Helping build community and mentorship for runners across generations, a lifelong competitor herself, she has completed over 18 marathons and remains active in USATF long-distance running leadership. A 2-star sport at Stanford, Evans competed in the NCAA Final Four in soccer and earned a master's degree through the Stanford Teacher Education Program. Today, she continues to shape American distance running with the same competitive spirit, curiosity, and the athlete-first approach that defined her own career on the track. Dina, thank you so much for joining us. As we said before, when I started this idea for the podcast, your name consistently showed up of someone that people wanted to hear from. So we're so excited to chat with you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That intro was very expansive and also kind of centers me among a lot of situations in which there was definitely a team approach, certainly among my coaching opportunities and, different partners and fellow travelers I've had along the way. So I appreciate all the gloss, but I certainly wouldn't want to, claim all those things solely. And maybe we could talk about that through the course of this today.
Yeah, so I think that leads us right into that first question. How would you describe that, coaching philosophy? It has led you to so much success that obviously did not happen by accident and never does. So where did you develop that and how has that evolved over your career?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think we all, even the best coach to the worst coach or the newest coach to the most experienced coach, experiences a ton of failure. So that always just makes the times that things work out pretty special. I enjoy, the beginner couch to 5K person just as much as I enjoy somebody who's got really lofty high performance goals. And the first thing I ever really coached was after my freshman year at college. I came home and signed up to be a Skyhawks sports camp coach, like one of those day camps. Yeah. And the very first day, there was a kid named Oliver there. This is the very first day. And he did not want to be there. I think his mom, I think there'd been trouble, kind of difficulties at home. His mom was kind of working full time. I got to put this kid in camp, and he did not want to be there. And he took off running during the first, this is a soccer camp. He took off running just across the field and just started going down the street. And we had gotten this big, long meeting, the day before about kind of the equivalent of today's safe sports stuff. Don't just be picking up kids and tossing them over your shoulder, just side hugs only, and all of this whole thing. And I'm like, what do I do? So I asked the one guy, the central leader guy, to come over and just watch my group. This is literally half an hour into the first thing. And then I ran after this kid, this 7-year-old kid he was describing where he lived, and he would live probably about 2-3 miles from home. And he was just going to walk home. And I didn't feel like I could, like I said, throw him up. I just wanted to just lug him back and be like, look, we'll sort this out with your mom. But we got to come back, And so I just ended up walking with him and talking with him and convincing him to come back to camp for 45 minutes, down this road, and eventually got him turned around to come back to camp. By this time, of course, the camp director had actually called his mom, and she was arriving back. But I think that, that day, the important thing was just how this kid felt. He wasn't having a good day. He didn't want to be there. Could we figure out a way to get him to want to be there, and get something out of the day? And that really has to do with the person rather than the thing that you're actually teaching. And I think that's kind of the way that I've continued to approach this stuff. Certainly when I started coaching at Stanford, I was, I had a master's degree in education. That's all I could say for myself. But I, had not done the running coaching in the way that, that much more seasoned people had done. And so I also knew that because I was very young, I couldn't really expect the athletes on the team to respect me with the same gravitas that they might for somebody who had tons of experience. So I started out just asking people to call me by my first name. And I just truly leaned on the fact that, leaned on my experiences as, a team captain and in my teaching education. And the year before, I had worked in the Academic Resource Center at Stanford. So I knew some of these athletes through a different way. And I just kind of leaned on that stuff and tried to learn as much, X's and O's as possible. And I was really fortunate. Vin Lanana, who was the head coach at the time, of course, and had coached me when I was in school, he really, allowed me a shocking amount of freedom actually to help with things, which I really appreciated at the time, and then subsequently since. But I started off that way, being look, I don't really know everything here, but I'm just going to come alongside you and coach you as a person, and we'll sort out the X's and O's. And that's 27 years later is kind of still the way that I think I approach coaching. So
that's awesome. Taryn and I have talked a lot about sort of the EQ of this and developing people, developing relationships, and understanding those in your care. I'm curious a little bit about sort of as you took over as head coach at Stanford, what were your core principles? I'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of your core principles that guided you as you built Stanford into the national championship program it is.
Well, yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, I definitely didn't build it into a national championship. We had plenty of success in the years prior to those years where I was on the coaching staff. And obviously a long tradition dating back to the days of Patty Sue Plummer and, Ceci Hop. And there were lots of luminaries even in the early 80s and lots of standouts throughout. I think, when Vin came in, started recruiting a lot of top-notch folks and kind of rejuvenated things, culminating in a men's, women's national title in cross country in 1996 onward, alongside Beth Sullivan, who had left before opening up the spot that ended up being me. So credit where credit is due. But I think for I thought a lot about that. Again, having the opportunity to kind of have these women just in front of me with, the ability, not having necessarily somebody behind me, with an overarching philosophy. And so I tried to think of things that I think would be transferable regardless. I wanted us to have really kind of some concrete goals so we knew what we were shooting for. One thing I remember saying is that I don't think anybody ever stands on top of the NCAA podium and is this is so crazy. I have no idea how I got here. This is a total fluke.
Right.
Who could have here I am. What a surprise.
No.
I don't think that's really what typically happens. I mean, occasionally you might have like a crazy last stretch run and surprise yourself, or but how you got there is through the hard work and the day after day and the things like that. So I was like, we're gonna know if we're gonna, when we are successful, we're gonna know why. So that kind of starts now or whatever at the beginning. I talked a lot about transparency. I felt like there's an environment where if you like are comfortable, and I find this to be true in my life, whether I can tell when in my own conduct when I'm falling in and out of this guideline or not. But you can be doing something really weird, but it's fine because people are like, oh, that's just weird. Like if you just really love the example I think I might use, like if you really love grape popsicles and like you aren't touching a cherry popsicle, you're not touching an orange pop, like you just love grape popsicles, like people might be like, wow, she's really onto those grape popsicles. It's not hurting anybody though. It's not like, it's like, it's kind of like a weird thing, but it's like, it's not a dangerous thing to yourself or others. It's just kind of like you've got a real specific preference, But when you find and so thus you don't mind standing on, I love grape popsicles. Like that's who I am. I love grape popsicles. But when you have things that maybe you don't feel comfortable talking about to your teammates or your coaches, you don't feel like you can talk about to your family or whatever, like that's the time to examine what those things are. Because if you're feeling like your conduct and where your mind's going are places that you don't feel like you can open up to other people about, then those are things that probably deserve a little bit of attention to understand why, and some excavation to maybe kind of your excavation and attention to those things. So talked a lot about transparency and the importance of it. There's a lot of things where you can have a big problem, but as long as we're working together on it, it feels like there's a solution, there's a road, there's a pathway. But you can have a little problem that is just a little problem. But if it's not being talked about, not being, worked on together cooperatively, can, turn into rot, that it becomes a big problem. So just like that type of communication and transparency, I felt like was something that we talked about a lot. And I think one of the things during the years prior when I was assistant coach and doing a lot of recruiting, and I feel this way now when I think about, people kind of joining our club, we're at 20 years now, Peninsula Distance Club next year. So it's been around for a long time and we don't really have hard and fast standards, but then as is now, I really am drawn to people who, for instance, Ariana Lambie is a good example. I'm thinking about a lot because she was elected into the Penn Relays Wall of Fame this spring, which was a special moment and well-deserved. But I remember her in high school. She was like many of the kids who I might be recruiting, like having a really strong high school career, but she would like run the 4x8 with, the underclassmen at a national meet or, do different things. She went to a small school, but would still kind of make time in her schedule to kind of, do those team things. And so that's a person that I felt like, is a person that would fit in well with a more of a high performance team environment. And as opposed to, the challenges when you have people who they haven't had the opportunity to experience, waiting for somebody else to go to the bathroom and, following behind somebody at an interval, that like, it's a really hard adjustment. And so that's the type of person that I love to find. And so that was something that I thought about a lot too.
Awesome. Thank you.
I mean, when I just think you look at the time you coached at Stanford, there's so many women whose names are still really relevant in some ways in the sport and have had a lot of impact, like Marika Powell's at, the director at the University of Washington. And how did you learn, or how did coaching those women at Stanford affect your coaching moving forward? I think so many coaches anymore get so caught up in how fast someone's run or what they think their athletic potential is, and they sort of forget about those other variables that sometimes may matter more than their athletic ability.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, college coaching, you do have to score points somewhere or else you're not going to have a job. So like that stuff is important for sure. I am so proud of the women that are still involved. I mean, I'm proud of all the women, but it is really a special thing when I see folks still excelling, whether it be Melindy Elmore, who is still, obviously rocking and rolling. And and if I told you how little she ran, she really struggled with injury her first couple of years. I mean, she would warm up by running in place. We'd have her run in place on the high jump mat. I mean, she was doing like yardage, like to see her, kind of do Ironman triathlons and then be such an incredible marathoner is just a testament to the human body's potential, but also just a testament to her, as was true then and obvious, just lifelong love. You never had a doubt that she was going to have a lifelong pursuit of the sport, and that's come to pass. And that was true then and like obvious. And I mean, she didn't wake up in the morning unless it was going to help her run a fast 1500. You know, like she was not distracted. If it helped, she would do it. If it didn't help, she wouldn't do it. And you know, that kind of just like love of the event she was doing and things like that is really still translating. Sarah Hall, of course, still is out there writing books and running fast and doing crazy things like running 4 marathons this spring or whatever she did. But, you know, that type of free spirit is, you know, a unique type of person to be around, coupled with great ability. So, you know, continues to be an inspiration to me when I see her out there doing amazing things. And, you know, like when I see, you know, Marisa, as I got to see her at Penn Relay, she was an honorary starter, which was something I was so glad to see. You know, when she was a student, she was the most reliable, like recruit host, and you know, just so much the same. That it surprises me not at all that she has been successful as a coach, because if you needed somebody to really like host a recruit or do a good job, or you just needed to make sure the trains ran on time, she just has always been like a very conscientious, thoughtful, hardworking person, like really hardworking person. And even things like I think I was talking about, like, I think she might have been the first person besides my husband maybe to see my daughter Adrian in the hospital. Like she came over to the hospital. I don't even know like why she came over so quickly, but you know, just really a special person. It's been great to see how much success that she and others who are still in coaching have had. So, and there's plenty of women on PDC who are coaching now and have been coaching, and you know, I love to see it. So I don't know if that answers the question. There was an answer in there, but
yeah, no, absolutely. Dina, we talk about athlete development and longer term stuff. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you help athletes build confidence and resilience. It's one of the things that, as when I was coaching, I coach 6th graders now, and I'm also coaching high school boys, and confidence is here one day, gone the other. But one of the things that we try to help them do is establish that confidence even and fail forward, if you will. So I'd love to hear a little bit about if there's things, your secret sauce, maybe.
Gosh, I wish I had a secret sauce because I'd put it on everything if I had
There you
that.
go.
Yeah. I think now when I interact with somebody new, I obviously have a point of view. Like we all have a point of view on certain things. And I have a way that I like to go about things, but I try to approach like a new person and kind of consider like what their life is, how it's shaped. Say somebody who's coming, they saying like, okay, let's work together. Try to evaluate like what their current thing is, and not very distinctly try not to change everything at once. You know, I have a preference sometimes for like what day of the week I prefer people to take off or light, or if, you know, I do have preferences and points of view, but I want to make sure that people, you know, have these hinge times, which I call them hinge, like these times of change and transition are oftentimes, you know, the place where you find injury and difficulty, you know, freshmen when they go into college, people when they first go into the pros, or, you know, just people moving across the country or starting new things. So I'm aware of that, having made mistakes in that area plenty of times before, continuing to make mistakes, try not to. But so I try to like gradually look at somebody's current situation and then try to change things if they need to be kind of, you know, assimilated into say a group to just benefit them because they want to actually, you know, be a part of a group. So it can't be just doing everything randomly on your own, just to do so kind of one thing at a time to hopefully allow, or like a lot of times I'll ask somebody, okay, what are a couple of workouts that have always given you confidence in the past? So that maybe I can refer back to them. I don't always do this. I should do this more than I should do this more so than I do now. But I try to think of like, okay, can I integrate in every so often just a workout that they recognize from maybe their previous environment, so they can kind of be like, okay, so that rings true. I am fit, you know, I'm ready to go. And I talk a lot about just like things, you know, there are things that we know that never go out of style. Finishing strong never goes out of style. You know, like doing the little thing, like doing your drills and strides well, never goes out of style, you know? So they're just having like the small wins, I think, and also paying attention to the details, are some things that can kind of give you confidence that you're squeezing the most out of your ability. And then I oftentimes talk a lot about, particularly in the context of the marathon, but in some other ways too, I always try to think inductively versus deductively. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but like we try to build the tower up versus like, this is the height of the tower it needs to be. And then like, how much do we have left? So even in the course of a marathon, like I would encourage people to think about like, if you run the first mile, and I'm really annoying when I'm actually running a marathon, like my friend Melinda, training partner, like we'll run a mile and I'll be like, great job us. Like, that was perfect mile. Like we're on a roll, like I'll just talk through like 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles and like celebrate the building up of the tower as opposed to like,
how much more do we have to lap?
Yeah, exactly. Like instead of saying 25 miles to go, I'm like, we did 1 mile. Like we're superstars. Like nothing can stop. Kind of like that. And that's the kind of the way I think. I'm like, people are like, well, they might come to you and say like, hey, I have a goal of, well, now the en vogue thing to say is I have a goal of qualifying for Olympic trials. I want to do it. I'm entered in XYZ race and I want to do it then. And I'll kind of say, well, let's try to keep you healthy and train as best we can. And then 2-3 weeks out, we'll kind of see where we've got to. And then we'll decide, like, we'll kind of figure out, like, what pace is actually possible. Because the Olympic trial standard, is a fairly arbitrary number. It's not completely arbitrary, but it's relative to a random person on the street. It's a relatively arbitrary number. The point is to just keep getting better, And if a lot of times if somebody's run like 240, I'll be like, well, it makes sense that anybody would try to run 3 to 5 minutes faster in their next marathon. So like that makes sense, but it makes sense because that's your next step as an athlete. It also happens to coincide with this random mark, but the point is to keep getting better,
Yeah. So many athletes get afraid of that, like in training, because they've got that goal of like, I want to qualify for this race, whether Boston or the trials. And when something doesn't go well in training that matches up to that, it's like, oh my gosh, total freak out moment. Like, I don't know if this is going to happen. And then that's when you really have to earn your paycheck as a coach because you're doing a lot more psychology at that point than maybe even coaching.
Yeah. And sometimes I do not get an A+ on that. And sometimes, like if I feel myself falling short, we all do. Like we try an approach that maybe turns out wasn't the best approach. But yeah, I think that that definitely is the case. I think, certain things that contribute to that sometimes are like wearables. Like I'm not recovered. It's like, okay, or I am recovered. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, well, my thing says that I'm recovered. I'm like, yeah, but yeah, so trying to manage that sometimes is a new component of that type of conversation. But yeah, things are going to go wrong. And hopefully, my goal, the way that I would say that I try to set up training is I'll say like, I'm going to try to help you build a profile of a person who can do the thing you're trying to do, and it'll be a cluster of data points, which will give us a suggestion that it's possible. Yeah. That's the way I'm thinking about like the tasks I'm having you do is to build a cluster of data points that will suggest. I don't think we're going to answer the question because if we've answered the question in training, then we don't need to do the race and you're probably overcooked anyway. But we'll try to have a cluster of data points that would suggest that with the right situation, what you're hoping to do is possible. So that cluster of data points includes some of those components of both X's and O's as well as the kind of mental preparation, or in the case of some of these distance races, like the hydration and fueling or whatever, the logistics, things like that, like all those come into play. But yeah, there's definitely times where things will go wrong, and so sometimes you just, sometimes it then helps to then make sure you've had a conversation about these kind of broader things about continuing to improve versus like one particular thing. Like there's a woman, Jen Odenheimer. So I want to just mention her. She's on our PDC group, just saw her last night. And she ran 2:37 last cycle. And you're thinking, oh, she's money. She's like, I think she ran 2:37.42. And then we had 2 or 3 attempts and just could not, like, then it was like an attempt, it was like 2:40, like we just couldn't get across. And she was so disappointed, and I was disappointed too. Like I felt like, what did we do? Like we just could not get it right on the day. And so she missed the last trials, which was, she had come a long way. She came to us at 2:57. So it's not like, I mean, this was still a dub that she was at 2:37. But of course, you get so close, you can taste it.
Yeah.
And she had like I think that was like, she had at least a year. So you're thinking, okay, we're going to rock
time.
this. Yeah. Didn't come together. And then last summer, she had she got a stress fracture, and we're like, and that was like a bummer because she was hoping to like come in both guns blazing at CIM. And so we kind of talked through scenarios like, okay, if your rehab goes just right, and we had kind of just enough time to do this, like if things were right. And even so, like, I think we had a little, I can't remember what it was. Maybe she was sick or something, like in the fall, like it was a little bit of a wobble, but all that to say, so it wasn't perfect lead up. It wasn't like this, like 9 months of like, she had this nice spring and like worked on her 5K, 10K, and then like, transitioned to marathon training. And it was like, oh, this perfect build up or blah, blah, blah. It wasn't that at all. Coming off an injury, I forget what it was, but like some little wobble kind of in the fall. And then she went 2:35. Anyway, and my point is like, at the time we were like just gripping it so hard before 2024, because she was so close, and like it was so disappointing that couldn't get her across the line. And then this time, like, definitely wasn't like the ideal lead up for it, and she just crushed it. So, I mean, just having those types of experiences leave you open to just remembering that just because one thing doesn't happen in like what you perceive as like the correct order, that doesn't mean it's not possible. I'm reminded again of Sarah Hall, actually, when she ran her first marathon at LA years ago. It did not go great. And I saw Josh Cox, who was her agent at the time, and that she had made the World Cross team, and it was like 2 weeks later or something or like a week later.
Yeah,
so
I remember
way
that.
too close, and she, obviously put all this effort into a marathon, and then the World Cross was kind of like like the cherry on top of the cake, but it wasn't necessarily, the marathon, all this stuff. It did not go well. And then she went over, and then she was like 20th or 25th at World Cross, like, in like a strong field. And, sometimes that happens, like you have a big disappointment, but you rebound, like the comeback is better than the setback. She's a person who's had a lot of that type of resilience throughout her career, but I see it a lot. So just got to be prepared for it.
Such a good reminder for athlete and coach. Like it's when you think it's perfect, it doesn't give you the result. And sometimes it doesn't have to be perfect for it to go really well too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Dina, talk a little bit. I know something I've been really curious about. You have this really incredible coaching career at Stanford, and then you made the move to step away from collegiate coaching, and that can be really scary. I know for me it's been a little bit scary as well, but you have been able to create this really beautiful thing and create your own path and have maybe even a bigger impact on the sport with what you're doing now. So talk to us a little bit more about that, because I think there's so many people that really have this narrow focus of what they think their impact in the sport can be. And there's so many more areas of opportunity and impact that needs to happen for athletes to be able to have growth and success across the board.
Yeah, I mean, that was a difficult set of choices at the time. There are a lot of really specific things about why I made that move. And it definitely came at like an economic cost to the continuity that we would love to enjoy with our careers. I became pretty active after that in like kind of an advocacy space on this front. Why don't we have more female coaches doing this or that? And in some areas we see growth, and in some areas we see retraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, there's a difference between obviously just any old job and then jobs that pay well. There's a $12,000 assistant coach job at a small school that's not going to pay anybody's bills, and it's not going to, have anybody's family moving house to go, chase that job. Yep. And then there's a job that pays well because you've been there for 10, 12, 20 years, and you have that continuity built up, both for your program, amongst your alumni, for their donor contributions and things like that, and also for your own career. And, I think the family planning stuff has been really difficult. I've made it more difficult for women to succeed in that space, but we do have some, great examples of people who've weathered that. So, Marisa being one, Diljit, so people, I'm just off the top of my head, and there's not a million, but there's several examples of that. So I'm encouraged to see some of that and to see, you can see the results of that. Some programs have continued to have strong traditions, good funding, and, the support to be able to have, to make a go of it. But I do think it is true that you do not have to do, there's not one way to make an impact. I think my personality is what, I usually raise my hand, like, as a personality trait.
Yeah.
And I do like hard work, and I'm not necessarily I don't mind being behind the scenes, and so that's why honestly I enjoy working on the USATF team staffs when I have the opportunity to do that, because it brings me a lot of joy to see our teams do well on the world stage. And whenever I leave home for one of those opportunities, I tell my family, I was like, if you hear my name, it's because I haven't done a good job. Like, you don't want to know. You don't want to know my name, because that means that things have gone, that the trains have stayed on the track. And so I enjoy that type of that stuff, that the opportunities where your lack of recognition sometimes is a recognition of that things have gone well, So, but that's just kind of a little bit of how, I enjoy things. I do like creating things. I like building things. I have a kind of a entrepreneurial personality, I think. So that's served me well over these last few years. And I do have a lot of, convictions and feelings about making a difference and things like that. So the having a little bit less of a traditional path has allowed me to do some of that in ways that I don't think I would have had time for otherwise. And ultimately it allowed me to do, my kids both were very involved in soccer growing up, and having the opportunity to, and as we know, youth sports culture, sounds like Taryn and Mike, you guys are both involved in a little bit of that. Yeah. I mean, it's intense, and so just being able to be supportive of my kids kind of going through that process is something that was, I think valuable to our family overall, and, a positive thing. So yeah. And looking back at it now, whenever I get a chance, I do try to encourage women to stick with it. I think some of the change that I think is continued to happen, and I think probably more is continually needed, is I had people at Stanford in their administration who I had great relationships with, and who were very supportive of me as a person. But I think that their own experiences as perhaps male administrators, though very supportive of me, they couldn't quite understand what I was talking about. Like, this is a long time. Like, when I came in and I was pregnant, it was like I was, pregnant enough that I was like, okay, it's time to probably talk to HR. Like, I went in there and I was like, hey, so looks like I'm pregnant. Like, and the HR guy was like pulling like a binder. He didn't even know like what we were supposed to do. Yeah. Like, it was just completely, to the point where for my eldest daughter, Adrian, the whole athletic department gave us a baby shower, because like that would never happen now, because like there's too many people have babies more often. But like it was such a crazy thing for somebody to have baby. Like, the whole department gave us a baby shower. It was like it was so perfect, and we were grateful for it, because assistant coach's salary on the time, plus my husband was working, but still our first kid, we could use everything we got. But yeah, like, you would not see the whole department give somebody a baby shower.
Nope.
Power 4 conference now.
Nope. But, you're hiding that baby.
It was like, whoa, it's crazy. I mean, so I think we've progressed a little bit, but it is, understanding kind of the, it's not necessarily just the money. It's things like, and I think distance coaches have it a little bit in an interesting way. You have all 3 seasons are competitive, so you have a lot of fixed dates, which make it really difficult.
There's no off season.
No off season. And then in the summer, if you have anybody who's pretty good, they're going to USAs or maybe going to U20s, and you're doing your recruiting. Like, at Stanford, we would take big swings at everybody. So I'd be going after the number 1 kid, and I'd be like,
home visits.
Exactly. There was no let off there. And we'd be going to like the big meets all 3 seasons, so that's just something that's a little bit unique. And also, as a distance coach, you've got the second heat of the 10K at 11 o'clock at night in some forsaken place, or like, just like, and so what's your 4-month-old supposed to do like during that time? So a lot of competitions, a lot of multi-day competitions where that's the case.
Mhm.
So there's just, as opposed to a sport that's a little bit more uniform in the way that, like, say like a sport like soccer or softball or something like that, like, or basketball, like there's a lot of travel and a lot of stuff, but you kind of like the game ends and starts, like it's the same time every time. You can kind of build a little bit of a schedule. This is like, okay, next week we're going to Brian Clay, and I'm looking at the thing now, or whatever. Brian Clay didn't exist when I was coaching college, but like, you're in heat 17 of the Open B in the 1500 at 11:23 at night, and you're in, section 3 of the Open A 5K at 6:35 in the morning. Like it's a lot of coaches in a lot of sports don't have to deal with quite that variety of things. So figuring out how to keep your kids' best interests, whether at home or on the road with you at that time, and when they're very small on the road with you, I think is a different challenge than in some sports. So we still got work to do. But I think there's a slightly more awareness about those things. And as I think younger kids come around and become coaches, I think they're a little bit more less kind of quote unquote traditional in the way they think those gender roles go. And I think that's been helpful. I think. I hope. I guess.
That's awesome. Dina, I'd love to hear a little bit about Peninsula Distance Club, and your experience with club. Is there uniqueness to coaching club? What have you learned from it? What have you applied from your time at Stanford to it? Love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was in the fortunate place where building the club, I just could kind of do whatever I want because, just making it up as we go.
Yeah.
So there were some choices that were made to kind of reflect that, having been through, running for the 90s era farm team with Jeff Johnson and observing real closely like the Gags era farm team in the early 2000s, other clubs in different places in the country and kind of come and go and this and that. Made a decision early on that our layer of the cake was not necessarily people who are on salary, but for running, but people, because the Bay Area is very expensive and it's not a great place to be if you don't already want to be there for some other reason. And we have a lot of people. I mean, our club membership is entirely people, basically 4 categories. They got a job, moved here, and we're like, hey, somebody told me I should call you when I got a job at Meta, or I got a job, whatever. Or 2, somebody's in school. I'm doing this grad program here, and somebody told me I should give you a call. 3, their partners are doing that. Oh, my wife's going to be a medical resident at UCSF. I'm going to be here for 4 years. What am I supposed to do? Or 4, they grew up here and are coming back. So all those categories of people kind of have another reason to be here. And that's good because it's all elective, even if you had enough, if you could raise enough sponsorship and money to do that, like rents and stuff are so expensive. And if we could even do that, we probably should spend all our time at altitude anyway, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even make sense. We have good weather here, but it's very trafficy and it's, there's pluses and minuses to everything. So everybody's here kind of for a different reason. And we're just trying to, have a collective environment that hopefully makes the sum be greater than the parts. It's hard to find a team atmosphere outside of college, and most people who've gone through the sport were used to that in high school and college. So having a continuance of that is a real benefit. I think also, especially since COVID, it's been really apparent that like having, a training environment, but also kind of the social components of that, having a group of people to show up to and to be accountable to and to do this thing that's kind of crazy that people are like, why are you getting up and running 4 miles and then going again later? And then, it's helpful to have some fellow travelers to go out to dinner with after, or to go to brunch on a Saturday after a run or a tempo run. So that component is really important. And I just really try hard to, like when we wrote our 501c3, I did not say we were going to cure childhood obesity. I did not say we were going to introduce everybody to the sport. I did not say we were going to, have 55 Olympians. Like those things are all awesome. And like introducing, underserved kids to the sport or whatever, all that stuff is super important to me, but that's like not what, like we try to keep it real narrow.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to have to be chasing you about stuff other than we want to talk about running. I mean, we do a couple, good neighborly things throughout the year. And like I said, those things are important to me. They're important to many of the people in the club as well in their own personal lives, but we just try to keep it really narrow because these people are busy, and it's hard enough. It's really, really hard to curate any sort of thing approaching a high performance environment with all the other factors that they're dealing with. So, and the different types of things, employment or grad school or just other stuff. So we just try to keep it pretty simple and pretty regulation free. And we rely on good people joining the club to be able to do that. And we can't, it's not a huge tent. It's a moderate to small tent because it's just really hard, like I said, to kind of curate that, especially if you want people to do track. Track is just really like people can, especially when like the standards were like 245, 247 for the women, or for example, you could kind of do your job, go out and run 10 miles, at 640 pace and kind of, do a long run workout on the weekend and kind of make it. But to do outdoor track and to do some of these standards now for the road races you need some more specificity. So it's hard to create that quality oftentimes within the workday. So
awesome.
Try to keep it narrow.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, like, what do you think athletes need, like, at each stage of their development to help? Not that you're preparing with a 10-year-old that they're going to be Olympic trials qualifier when they're 20, but where can we do a better job starting at youth sports to help set them up for that development? So that way, each stage should build off the next. And I fear we're cooking some of these kids a little too early, or are focused on their performance rather than the process.
Sure. Well, and it's understandable to a certain extent. I mean, getting into college is so hard right now. So if you have something like an athletic ability that could potentially lead you to an opportunity that you wouldn't normally get, that is a really attractive thing. So I can understand, having gone through that not too far long ago with my own kids, I can understand that being a significant motivation. For those kids who feel like there's the potential of money through NIL or social stuff or whatever it is, I can understand, like, that might be difficult. I think particularly with girls, it's just super important that I would call it kind of leaving room for cream, like, and that's kind of back to my thing about you don't always need to answer the question in training. Sometimes you leave the question open-ended because that's what competition, or in this case, like future years, are for. There's I don't get a ton of these, but I'm getting kind of more and more kind of inbounds from, some younger athletes. And, I work with a middle schooler who's going to attend a high school next year and work with a woman that I don't want to like tell everybody's names, but a woman that I used to coach herself. And so I kind of, it's been a process of basically kind of like holding her back, to be honest. Cause I'm like, that's, insert name, that's next year's not problem, but like, I in my mind, I'm thinking, I just want her to be like fresh and ready for the next, to enjoy, high school opportunity. She's really avid. She's really capable. So there's a role there for doing some stuff, but like my goal is to have her be in a position to enjoy the next level, Yeah. And so that's kind of the way I think about it. Occasionally there is a point, like, look, I'm 50, I'm turning 51, I'm out there with my training partner. Like, we're not preparing we're preparing for stuff, but like, we're not like, warming up for the senior games in 20 years. Like, like whatever we can do, we can do. But certainly for adolescents, there's a lot of road ahead. And I think of the journey of my own kids. My eldest daughter, she did a lot of club soccer, did all the things, played in college for UPenn, and now is playing for, like a high level amateur team. But it's like, it's all elective, just kind of like PDC. It's all elective, but she's got a regular 9-to-5 job, and but it's a group of women who kind of all played in college, and they're, they take them, they have some fun, but it's like they try to play good soccer, and she's still enjoying soccer, which was like, if you told me when she was 7, that would be kind of my goal. Like, she had an experience where, it helped enhance her student experience going through, those ages. And that's a benefit, certainly. But the fact that she's still enjoying it as an adult, as a completely elective thing, like nobody is saying you have to do this anymore. Where the way, not that we were saying that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like, oh, I better do this so I have this thing. Like, it's completely elective, and she's still doing it. So that kind of makes me happy. And that's what I want for most of these, especially because, like, I know how much enjoyment I get out of it at this age. And I've been running for 40 years. So like, I want people to still be enjoying it, for mental health, for, fighting off perimenopause, whatever their, whatever their reasons are. Guys too, certainly. But yeah.
Joy, fun, right? Those are the key words. Hearing that, engagement, community, all those things are wonderful. Dina, when your career's over, when you put it all away, what do you hope people who you've coached remember the most about being on your team or being coached by you?
I I don't know. I don't really think about that too much. So I don't know if I know how to answer it. But I would say a lot of people that I've coached, both adult to adult, adult to adolescent, are like good friends now. So I'm really grateful and thankful for that. So I'm glad for that, and I'm, when I see, as I said before, like, I think when I see other people that I've coached, coaching other folks, that makes me pretty happy. When I see people, even just like, just the men and women who are in our club, like, even after a time, maybe they've put aside like the kind of their peak competitive times and are still participating, like that's great too. I enjoy seeing that. So yeah, I just want people to continue to get that benefit of, the benefits of, challenging yourself and just physical fitness and all that stuff. And I hope that, sometimes things don't go as planned, but, the folks, especially like the PDC folks, like, there's a lot of variables that come into play when you graduate college and you're still trying to do this. So it doesn't always work out, for sure. But I want people to at least feel like they gave it a go, like they took a shot, and like maybe the shot didn't go in, or, maybe it did. And they kind of got to able to take a look at it and be like, okay, this is me giving it a go. Like, this is, I think, what I can do. And maybe they made it to base camp. Maybe they made it to the top of the mountain, but they got to kind of have a clear look at the hoop and take a shot, So
love that.
And then they can kind of feel like, okay, I gave it a go, and that feels good.
Totally.
Especially when it goes well. Not as much when it doesn't go well, but
Love that.
So we usually close with, if you could give a new coach one piece of advice, what would it be? But I want to adjust that a little bit. Like, what advice could you give to young women to have successful coaching careers? And what do you think we can do to better support them to keep them active as coaches for longer?
I think don't make a big deal about coaching guys or coaching women. I think just, when I go to training, I think about paces, like who's running a 65, who's running a 70, who's running a 75. That's one thing that I think, starting out kind of coaching primarily women, but like did a ton of camps and stuff like that. Just like it is what it like, just mix and match. I think that's one of the really the gifts we have with track and field are oftentimes the combined men and women nature of that a lot of sports don't enjoy. And obviously in the collegiate context, that's not always possible to mix and mingle, but certainly in the post-collegiate context, like that cooperative environment and just not really, I don't know. I think young women, they can coach guys. I think, just as much as guys can coach women, it's fine. So just not tethering yourself that way, I think. And I think just that, some of the usual stuff that people oftentimes say, sometimes take a chance on something you're not quite sure you're qualified for, but kind of back yourself to be able to rise to the challenge, even if it is kind of like, even if there is a little bit of negative space between your qualifications and the job, like back yourself to be able to meet that challenge. I'd say that to a young coach. And, I would say also to raise your hand, like get involved. Some of the very first few weeks that I was coaching at Stanford. So, the first few weeks I was coaching as like an actual career as opposed to like coaching camps or coaching whatever, mostly I think because everybody in the room had kind of done it before. Vin was like kind of made me like nominate myself for it to be like our regional rep in the old Intercollegiate Coaches Association for cross country. And it was like a bunch of, these guys who would all know me when I was competing. So if they were calling me by my maiden name, I wasn't the greatest, I was like, look, I've been on the job for like a month. I don't know what the Sam Hill I'm doing, but it was really instructive to be a part of that, of the kind of the governance process and understand some things about how decisions were made. And, and that's kind of a pattern that I followed, now and being involved in USA Track and Field and on the board and on the long distance running committee and things like that. Like, take part, partly because like if there's something you don't like, you're complaining about, like do something about it, like it sounds kind of trite to say be the change because it's not always necessarily your role, but you'll get in there, get your hands dirty, and that's that. Maybe while you're kind of waiting for yourself to get seasoned enough to have, credibility, you can at least identify yourself as a hard worker and someone who's willing to get involved and who's knowledgeable about these other components that all it takes is just attention and time, know? So you can kind of build credibility in some different ways until everything kind of catches up, like age and credentialing from, results and things like that. So
awesome.
That's great advice.
Yeah. Love that.
Well, Dina, thank you so much for being on the show. We're so grateful to have you, and hopefully everyone can learn as much as we've gotten from this episode.
I really appreciate you guys having me on, and have a great day. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for joining us on Sideline Ascent.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts on Spotify or Apple Music so you never miss an episode.
And stay connected with us on YouTube and Instagram. We love hearing what messages resonated with you or who you'd like to hear from next.
If this conversation hit home for you, share it with somebody who appreciates it, a friend, a teammate, or a coach.